Hey there, so now it is time to talk about the guest list. So, first and foremost, what I highly recommend is that you make a preliminary guest list for everyone that you would like invited to your wedding. Have your fiance make a preliminary guest list for everyone he would like invited to the wedding. Then have your parents and his parents both create preliminary guest lists that they would like invited to the wedding. So you're going to have 4 separate guest lists. So it could be more if your parents work on them separately. But my point is you're going to have a lot of preliminary guest lists to look at. That will give you a good reference point on if this is supposedly going to be a small wedding, a medium-sized wedding, or a massive wedding. So I just want to make sure that you are aware that creating that preliminary guest list does not automatically mean that someone is going to make the final cut and be invited to your wedding. This is just a rough idea for you to brainstorm names, to get your brain flowing. That way you don't forget anyone or leave anyone out, because that can cause some really hard feelings. Additionally, in regards to the guest list, some couples decide against having kids at the wedding ceremony and reception. So this will cut down on how many meals you have to provide. And this will also prevent crying from infants interrupting your ceremony. Like during the vows, I've seen so many weddings where babies are crying when the couple are saying their vows. So maybe you're like, oh yes, like I definitely don't want kids at the wedding. Or maybe you're on the opposite end and you're like, I have so many nieces and nephews that I can't imagine not letting them come to the wedding. So then in that case, obviously include all the kids. So plus ones are also pretty much a shoo-in for your wedding. So anyone that you invite automatically gets to bring a plus one if they choose. So be sure to factor in those plus ones for your guest list count, because that can really add up quickly for the guest count. So when it comes to if you should invite someone or not, I have some amazing questions that you can ask yourself, ask your fiance, ask your parents, or ask his parents. So questions that you can ask to help narrow your guest list down if it is way too long is, have we spoken to this person in the last year? If you haven't, then you probably aren't super close and you could maybe afford to not invite them to the wedding. But if it's going to cause hard feelings, then maybe don't. Leave them off the list. So additionally, do you have a close personal or family connection with this person? Obviously, you're going to invite your close friends, and family members and relatives are pretty much a shoo-in unless you want drama in the family. Will not inviting this person cause any sort of family or personal drama? You know, even if you're not a huge fan of the person, if you are a blood relative or something similar to that, you don't want to divide your family, you don't want to cause drama, so maybe it's just worth paying the extra cost for that additional guest. So, will this person be a part of our life as a couple? If this is a family member or friend, have you personally spoken to or seen this person in the last 2 years? If you have, would your day be the same without them? If you're like, absolutely not, they make every day so much better, then please invite them. Your parents' friends, this can be difficult, especially if your parents are contributing to the wedding costs. If they are contributing to the wedding financially, then they definitely get a say in the guest list. That's just how it goes. So if they're helping pay for your wedding, then they also get a say in your guest list. But I also want you to take into consideration that this is your wedding day, and if you envision it just being a small, intimate wedding with 50 people, then if your parents come to you with a list of 500 people, you need to have a conversation and say, hey, I really just want a small wedding. Is there maybe a couple friends that you would want to invite, like your closest best friends? And then hopefully they can see from your perspective that you did not want a large wedding, so then they'll have to adjust their list accordingly. So with work coworkers or bosses, so if it's your boss, yes, definitely invite them. But coworkers, this can be a little bit complicated. So do you hang out outside of the office? If you do, definitely invite them. If you don't hang out outside of the office, then you can cut them from the list. And honestly though, in some scenarios, it may just be easier to leave all of your coworkers off the guest list, except if you hang out outside of work. So for my example that I wanted to include is, for my wedding, my dad decided just to invite his boss, and he left all of his coworkers off the list, not because they weren't important, but just because he didn't know where to draw the line, because he is really high up in his company and he knows everyone in the whole plant. So he felt obligated to invite everyone to prevent hard feelings, and so he said, you know what, I'll just invite my boss and I'll leave all my coworkers out. So that might be something that you need to do for your parents or for your work. It all depends. Every scenario is so different. What really helps is if you immediately start messaging people for their addresses. This is once you have the guest list absolutely finalized, because you don't want to ask someone for their address for an invitation and then turn around and not invite them. How rude would that be? So I recommend immediately messaging people for their addresses once you know for sure that they're invited to the wedding. This could be via text, through email, through phone calls, social media, because lots of times we just don't have people's addresses anymore to send them physical mail, which is obviously how the invitation is more than likely going to get to them. Some people do electronic invites, but most of the time it's most formal to use physical mail. So start gathering their addresses and creating an address book. That way you can refer to it for everything regarding invitations for the bridal shower or for the wedding and all that fun stuff. Additionally, I want you to keep in the back of your mind to estimate that 25% of the guests that you invite will not actually be able to attend the wedding. Some people have events going on that same weekend. Some aren't able to travel and make it to your wedding. There are so many different scenarios, and you might think that that's a lot of people that won't make it, but that is actually pretty much true. About 25% of the guest list that you invite will not be coming to your wedding. Additionally, you won't be sending in the meal orders until your RSVPs are actually in, which can be a month to as little as 2 weeks before the wedding. So you may not know your final guest count until maybe 10 days before the wedding, which was the case for our wedding. So just keep in mind that the more people you invite, the more expensive your wedding is going to be. So if you're like, you know what, our budget is limited, then maybe keep your guest list to a minimum. I know it can be very difficult to know when to draw the line and who to invite, or you don't want to cause hard feelings. You just have to do a lot of soul searching and really think about, okay, have I spoken to them in a year? Like, do I hang out with them ever? Or am I just being very kind and trying to accommodate everyone and make everyone feel welcome? But like I said, the more people you invite, the more expensive your wedding is going to become. So on your wedding website, make sure you include a section for the RSVPs. That way your guest list can actually RSVP via the website, and that way it'll prevent you from having to track down and contact everyone on your list to see if they're coming. So I included our wedding website information on the back of our save the dates as well as on our wedding invitations, because you have to know, the guests have to know where to go to RSVP or who to talk to. So make sure you have that information on your stationery, like the save the dates or the wedding invitations. That way your guests know how to RSVP. So I hope this gives you a little bit of clarity on how to formulate your guest list. Like I said, you might go through many rounds of a guest list. So start with a preliminary list, then you might start cutting people out and write up a new list. You might go through 4 or 5 rounds of eliminating people. It's a process. You really have to decide and figure out what that dividing line is. But hopefully this gives you a good reference point and gives you a good starting guide. So please continue on, and thank you for watching.